Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi is in chapter 5 of Gittin, Mishnah 3 and 4 today. Now, yesterday we began chapter 5, Hanizakin. We mentioned the concept of nechosim Meshubadim, encumbered property or sold property, and nechosim bnei churin, free properties, properties that he has in hand right now. A common example of when this distinction comes up is when someone borrowed money. At the time of that transaction, he owned 2 fields. And then he sold one of those fields. That field he sold is nechosim mishubadim. It has a shibud, a lien, to pay off that loan, that debt, if the borrower has no other assets from which to pay it. And we saw yesterday if the lender still has nechosim bnei churin, unsold property, or of course if he has cash or other movable assets, then the lender cannot go to the nechosim mishubadim to collect the debt. Now let's get on to Mishnah Gimel. Ein motzi, and we do not collect payments le'achilat peirot, for eating of produce. The Bartanura says, based on the Gemara, this is a case where someone sold land and promised the buyer in the contract they would compensate them if this land turned out to be stolen. We'll see similar cases to this in tomorrow's Mishnayot, lishvach karkayot, or shevach, investments, improvements made in the karka. For instance, the buyer planted trees, made capital investments, built skyscrapers. The Mishnah adds lamazon isha banot, and food for the wife and the children. This is if a man passes away, and the estate is, of course, obligated to feed the wife and the children. And we saw in Ketuvot, the widow can stay on in the estate and continue being supported normally from the estate as long as she wants, as long as she's not trying to get remarried. So all of these debts really have no limits. Potentially, the widow could be in the estate for decades. Someone could build skyscrapers. There could be a lot of produce on the field when it is repossessed by the original owner. So there's no limit. So we don't collect from these nechosim mishubadim, from the encumbered properties, from sold properties. Mipnei tikun olam, again, as we saw in the last chapter, for the benefit of society, we don't want buyers of property to be on the hook for potentially unknown and limitless financial obligations of the seller. The Mishnah adds a motzi mitzia. Somebody finds a lost object, for instance, a wallet with cash in it. Lo yishavi, does not have to make a shavua about how much cash there was when he returns it to the rightful owner. Mipnei tikun olam. If that were the case, people wouldn't want to return lost objects if they'd have to make a shavua. Now, this reminds us of that story from the shtetl where the poor man finds a bag with 100 rubles. It's a lot of money, and they announce it. Who lost 100 rubles? A rich man comes, he says, yes, that's definitely my bag, but there was 200 rubles in the bag when I lost it. And they go in front of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says to the poor man, the finder, he says, listen, are you willing to make a shavua that you found it with 100 rubles? He says, yes, I certainly could. He says to the rich man, listen, are you willing to make a shavua that there was 200 rubles in it? He says, yes, I swear right now that there were 200 rubles in that wallet, in that bag, when I lost it. And the Rebbe says, of course, says, if that's the case, then this money that the poor man found, that wasn't your money bag. And he awards the bag to the poor man. On to Mishnah Daled, Yatomim, orphans, shesomchu etzel bal habayit. They're relying on a bal habayit, an older, established gentleman. You know, they're still young when their father passed away. They're not so experienced with financial dealings and investments and acquisitions. Or their father appointed an administrator for their estate, for their affairs. Chayiv, the administrator or the balabait, is obligated l'asr perotein, to separate truma and meiser, the proper tithes, so that these orphans, these children, don't eat untithed produce. Now, a related halacha, apotropos, an administrator, a guardian, sheminahu aviyatomim, that the father had asked him to serve as the guardian when he was still alive over the orphans. Yeshava, he needs to make a shvua that he has not used or embezzled or kept any of the estate for himself. Minahu beitin, if the court appointed the guardian, lo yeshava, he does not have to make the shvua. Now, the motivation for this distinction is a guardian who's known to the father. He's probably serving because he has a connection to the family, or he has some loyalty to the father himself, a relationship. But if the court is appointing a guardian, there's no pre-existing relationship. If you make him make a shvua, people aren't going to want to serve as a court-appointed guardian for orphans. Abba Shaul Mary disagrees, says, Hiluf hadavarim, he says, reverse these words. He says if a guardian is appointed by the court, he gets a measure of esteem and respect, and now he's trusted by the court of the community, so he should not have to make a shvuah. Rather, he should have to make a shvuah if he's appointed by the court, because there's a benefit personally for doing so, but one appointed by the father in his lifetime should not have to make a shvuah. So if you make him make a shvuah, and he's just doing it out of the goodness of his heart, the relationship, the loyalty, he might not want to take the job. And finally, the Mishnah adds liability for damage that's intangible. Hezek she'eno nicker. Hametame, somebody contaminates, spiritually contaminates someone else's item. Hamdameya, he mixes it. Dimua mixes truma into regular tithed produce, and now it can't be eaten. Hamnosech, someone performs nisuch, a libation with someone's wine, and that renders the wine forbidden. They used to pour out wine on the altar in front of the idol for idolatrous rites. So in these cases, b'shogeg, if the damager did this by mistake, he didn't realize what he's doing or that it was not uncontaminated, potter, he doesn't have to pay for it. B'mezid, if he's doing this on purpose, chayiv, he has to pay the value for the damage he did. Even though you can't see the damage, it's just a halachic form of damage, he's still on the hook. Finally, you have kohanim, the priests in the temple, shepiglu, they made an offering pigel. Now, pigel refers to having an intention to consume or eat this offering out of the right time, and it makes the offering invalid. So if during one of the critical junctures of the korbanic process, the offering service, the Kohen has the wrong intention, it can make the offering totally useless. So piglu b'mikdosh mezidin chayav, and if they did it on purpose, then they are liable. If it was a mistake and they thought it was a different carbon and they thought it was a different time limit or different place, then they're not on the hook. But if they're purposefully messing up someone else's carbon, they have to pay for it. And the Bartender adds, even if the owner of this offering had said that this specific animal is my offering, so in that case he doesn't have to bring a replacement if it's lost or damaged and this one is unusable, even then the Kohen who's mefagel, who makes it puzzle on purpose, must pay. Shkoyach.